chance to do it. How are you, Stephen? Lovely to meet you. I'm Blake.
Nice to meet you. I'm
Good to meet-
Steve.
just
You already
previously.
knew that.
Oh, I do now, yes. No, but good to put a face to the name.
Excellent.
We've just met, as often happens in the comedy scene.
Yes.
But were you in town from, where are you from?
I'm from Brisbane.
From Brisbane?
Yeah.
Been there for a number of years?
Yes, I've been 20 years next year. I've been
20
back
years?
up there, yeah.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
I grew up there and then couldn't wait to leave, left, and then came back in 2004.
No place
Been up
like
there
home, as they say.
That's it. That's
Where
what
did you
they
leave
say.
to?
Adelaide.
Oh, okay, great.
I know, moving progressively sideways.
Yep.
But Adelaide's where I started comedy, which was a lot of fun back in 1996.
1996, where I was 1 year old. Great year of my life at one.
I don't think we needed to do that.
I did, just to reflect on the earlier childhood. But 1996.
Yes.
What a
yes.
time.
Welcome to my new festival show, I Hate Young People.
Yeah. We've got some hot sauce on the side. We're going to punish me later on.
Yes.
Well, 1996, but I wanted to go back a little bit as well. Before you started stand-up comedy, do you remember the first time you saw stand-up comedy? Was it a
Yes.
special? Was it on a videotape? What was it?
I was really lucky. My father's a British guy, and he just loved comedy. So I grew up on a steady diet of like the Two Ronnies, Hello, Hello, Open All Hours,
Yep.
all that sort of stuff. But as a youngster, this will show how old I am. From our local library, you used to be able to hire cassettes. You should Google them. They were fantastic.
I'll give them a Google, yeah.
Young people. But and I used to be able to borrow these cassettes. And I used to borrow, I know he's been cancelled now, but he wasn't back then. Bill Cosby doing his live stand-up.
Okay.
And a lot of British guys. And I'd go home and listen to them. And even though I didn't understand exactly all of the jokes and all of the punchlines, and what I didn't realise until recently, what I was teaching myself was the cadence and how to deliver a joke. I learnt and I programmed myself that when these people spoke a certain way and then paused, people would laugh.
Yes.
And then, so when I got into comedy and I started to realize actually how to write a joke, because of all this stuff that I'd listened to and unconsciously programmed myself with, I found it easier to deliver a joke. But then as a teenager, I saw, as most of us did, Eddie Murphy in Raw and
Yep.
Delirious. And we just devoured that over and over again. And I think at the age of 16, I could recite both of those shows from start to finish with
wow.
all of the mannerisms and everything. But to me, and I used to watch the Billy Connolly and the Australian guys, Rodney Roode and Kevin Bloody Wilson, and all those guys.
They were the pioneers.
But when you watch someone who's really good, you sit there and they just make it so natural and so effortless, and you just go, oh, I could never do that. It's something that you're obviously born with, and blah, blah, blah. And then, so I was a musician, and then I got a gig in a comedy club as a sound and lights tech. The most undervalued part of any comedy club, I must say. And then,
Imagine
watching
the lights cut out right there, Stephen. Just like,
my microphone's not even on anymore. They're just at
he's
the back.
drunk at the back. He's like, I fucking, right.
He's
we
just
do.
at the back going, check this wanker out. Yeah. He's actually overdubbing whatever he wants. I'm speaking in Swahili at the moment. But yeah, watching the guys, and then I realized what they were doing and how they were structuring jokes and everything like that. And I thought, I'll give that a go.
Yeah.
And it was life-changing.
Well, you mentioned like Eddie Murphy. I mean, so many comics mention that Raw and Delirious just being like pivotal for them. And, you know, Billy Connolly as well, early influences.
Yep.
What is it? Because there's so many different styles of stand-up comedy, but there's so many greats as well. What is it to you? I mean, if you could articulate something, have you thought about this? What makes a great comic? What makes, in your opinion, what elements do they need to have? And it doesn't have to be obviously a particular style, but what do they need to have to be a great comic, do you think?
Relatability.
Yes, sure.
I honestly think, and I've based my career and my whole act and everything on being a bogan, because it's what I am. It's how I grew up. And I find, generally speaking, everyone can relate to that, because everybody either knows a bogan or they are one. And I find audiences, they tend to relax and connect more if, as long as laughing at you, they're sitting there looking at each other, nodding.
Yeah.
You know, like that's why, you know, marriage stuff and husband and wife stuff works so well, because couples will sit there and go, oh, that's you.
Yes,
And you do
yes.
that. and I'm not talking to you anymore, and you're right, we should divorce.
Yeah. Love it when that happens.
Oh, it's great.
Love
if
to
I
just-
don't get at least one divorce from every show, I fucking
It's a
give
bomb.
up.
It's a bomb.
It's a bomb. I go but yeah, I think relatability. I think
That's great.
if people can sit there and actually visualize someone or something in their life about what you're talking about, then it just makes it easier, and they feel they've got a connection with you.
Yeah, I love that too. And I suppose that is what connects why people come to stand-up comedy, whether they know it or not. It's to relate and connect and escape. Is there any particular comedian, either working today or that great from the past that you admired possibly the most and had a huge influence on you? And what was it about them that you admired?
Definitely Billy Connolly.
Yeah.
Just because of his effortlessness to the way he commanded a stage. Pacing manically from one side to the other. Yeah. The fact that he never used a hand... Well, I wouldn't say never, because I know people will be out there going, oh, actually, in his 1978 special, very rarely did he use handheld microphones. He was very... the wireless, so that he could have both hands and just gesticulating wildly all over. But the thing is, and this is... tags back to what I was saying before, he made it look so effortless. He just got on stage and just started talking. And his tales would intertwine with each other, and he would always bring it back. He'd always get sidetracked, and it's something that I try and do, where you just chat and you go sideways, and then you'll be like, fuck, what was I talking about?
Sure.
And he was entertaining to watch. He was entertaining to listen to. He was just, to me, he was the whole package of what a stand-up comedian should be. An entertainer. He was entertaining.
Wasn't he great? Yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, I was mentioning it previously with another comic we were interviewing, but I said that the 1997 two-night stand, his special, was the first stand-up thing I ever saw.
Righto.
It was a DVD that my granddad had, and I watched that. And I remember just the same thing, not noticing anything being different, but just the hands free, the articulation, the performance, and that was my early influence. Thinking, well, that's what it has to be like.
I remember this is an insight into the human psyche, or maybe just fucking mine. I don't know, but I remember one of the first things I saw of Billy Connolly was from must be the early to mid '80s, and it was called An Audience with Billy Connolly, and it was all famous people. Like, the audience was just made up of all these actors and other comedians and musicians and stuff like that. And I remember sitting there watching it, and my head just went, oh, wow, if famous people are laughing at him, he must be really funny. Like, it's one thing to make us working plebs laugh, but,
sure.
If Cliff Richard was there and Elton John was there and all these British people, and it was just... Yeah, I remember just in my brain just going, oh, if famous people find him funny, he must be really funny.
Yeah, sure. He's so revered, isn't he?
He is, and with good reason.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking as well, I mean, a lot of comics want to know about how to, and just general punters as well, they want to know, how do comedians come up with their material? It's such a general question. Obviously, everyone has a different process, but over your career, what have you found to be the most optimal way of writing for yourself and developing material? Do you sit down, discipline every day in front of the computer? Do you get out and try and live life?
This is weird. This is the third time I've had this conversation today.
Just today?
This is great. I spent the day hanging out with comedians, so we're always talking about each other's process. This is not a recommendation for anyone else at all. It's just the way I do things. I don't write. What happens is I'll have a punchline, or something will come to me and I'll go, oh, that's funny. And I want to tell that on stage. And so I take it on stage and I say it, and then other stuff just branches off from that. So I do a lot of writing on stage.
Okay.
And I find it's good, because if something doesn't work, you just discard it. It never comes back.
Okay.
Whereas I find if I write stuff down, you go back to it just because it's there, and you find yourself trying to make stuff work.
Yes.
Whereas if you do it on the fly and you throw it out there and it works, then boom, it's in there.
Right. Okay.
If you throw it out there and it doesn't work, then bang, it's gone, and you just move on, and you didn't waste time with this whole bit. And I'm very lucky. I do a lot of work on cruise ships, so I get to spend a lot of time on stage. When I work on ships, we're doing a lot of shows in a short space of time. So I'm very lucky in the space that I've got enough stage time to actually, if you are only doing a few gigs a month, then obviously that style of writing is not going to work for you, because it's too far in between gigs
Yes.
to remember whether something worked or whether something didn't. But that's the way I find it works best for me. And that way, when I do it, it's natural to my style because I haven't rehearsed it. So I haven't. You'll see someone who's overly rehearsed a bit, and you can tell that it's very thespian, it's very staged, it's very acted. Whereas when you watch someone and it's just them chatting, then and that's just the way I do it.
Yeah.
As I say, it doesn't work for everyone, and I'm not saying it's the way everyone should do it, but that's just the way I've always done it. I start from a punchline and work backwards, and
the reverse engineer of a bit.
Pretty much, yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, you mentioned as well that you do a lot of stage time, because that seems to be just a non-negotiable over, not in terms of you have to be doing a lot of stage time at any one point in your career, but in order to get great, you need stage time, you need those reps, you need that time.
Most definitely. You're only ever going to get better in front of a live audience because audiences, they don't give a fuck.
Yeah, sure.
If they don't like you, they're not invested. So they don't have to like you and they don't have to pretend, and they won't. And so if you can get an audience rolling and laughing in the eyes, then you've earned that. You know, and that means that what you're doing is funny.
Yeah.
Trialing it on friends and mates and even at open mic nights in front of other comics and stuff like that, I don't find personally that you're getting a true reflection, because people won't want to hurt your feelings, or they'll want to encourage you, and
they might be that's not their style. They don't like.
That's right.
Particularly those types of jokes, and
But a live audience who have paid money to come out and see you, or have just taken time out of their life to come and see you, they don't give a fuck about your feelings. And if they don't like something, then they will let you know very quickly.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you again, I'm fascinated as a comic early in my career, but you come across different types of crowds. There's no one, there's no one same crowd. No. They're all different and different types of, and each comic that I see that's a little bit more experienced that I admire, they have so many different tools for different problems, so to speak. So is that something that you developed over your career? Like, working cruise ships, obviously you mentioned that, but there's one thing to do a great set in a pro comedy room where people have come for that night. It's like the Comedy Lounge. It's a beautifully set up venue. Everyone's here. They trust you so much, versus a pub out in a country town with 15 blokes who think they're actually funnier than you. And how do you solve that problem? So, I mean, do you have any particular stories about that, or tips as to how you develop that?
Mate, as I said, 26, 27 years I've been doing it. I have played every toilet in this country. And I will say to people that want to get into comedy and up-and-coming comedians is take every gig you can, even the ones that you know are going to be a nightmare. Go and do it. Because no matter how bad you think it's going to be, and no matter how bad at the time it feels, it's over, in that night. But you'll learn from every gig. And it's like you say, if you can go out, this is one of my favourite venues to play, and it's such a great room, and it's so set up to have a successful show.
Yes.
Right? But it's still great to come up here and perform. But if you can go out, as you say, to a pub, on an open mic night where there's 20 people there who just want to bet on the TAB and sink schooners, and they don't want you there. Yeah. And I mean, I've done plenty of those where people have I remember doing a show up in Brisbane, an open mic night, and it was at a pub that was in between the two horse race courses, Doomben and Eagle Farm, and there's one pub smack bang in the middle, the Hamilton Hotel, and we ran an open mic night there on a Wednesday night, which was the race day, and we walked in there, and I remember walking in there, and there was 150 people in this bar, and we were in the TAB bar of all places.
We've packed it out. They're all here.
I'm like, this is going to be great. There's so many people. And the MC got on stage, and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, who's ready to see some comedy? And 150 people went, fuck off. And the MC went, no, seriously, who wants to see some comedy? And they went, no, seriously, fuck off. And he tried to do a joke, and someone literally walked over to the wall and just pulled the plug out of the sound desk and turned around and went, now will you fuck off? Now, the thing is, you are not going to win that crowd over. And we just all said, let's go home. But then there's other times where I've done gigs in mining communities, where they just want to fight. You know? And they're like, give me a reason. And I remember being on stage and there was like 100 people in the room and none of them were listening to me except like 5 people at the front. And so I just played to those 5 people.
Sure.
But gave it my all.
Yep.
And then like 5 or 10 minutes later, without me even realizing it, everyone else was listening as well. And that gig sticks out because if you can walk out to a crowd that want to see you, and play to them, that's one thing. But if you can go out and win a crowd over who actually want to hate you, then you walk away going, fuck yeah, you know.
That was a good old time.
That was a good one. I really worked for that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm curious about as well. Is it what constitutes for you? I mean, you've just kind of articulated there, but what makes a great gig for you, even these days, you know, because I mean, it's not always the gig where you do well and you get the laughs, you know. Sometimes that can even feel hollow because you're like, oh, my tricks worked, but I wasn't present tonight. I just kind of gave them the show and they liked it. That's all good. But what makes a great show for you personally, where you walk away and go, oh, you know what, that was really fulfilling?
For me now, it's literally so long as they had a good time and they laughed. That's all I need.
Okay.
How I feel about it, I mean, you still do. You still go home at the end of the night going, oh, I fucked that punchline up, or I could have done this, or I could have done that. But what was important for me was when I stopped making it about me.
Right.
And it's just seriously about these guys. And as long as they have a good time and as long as everyone laughs or, you know, you're never going to get everyone, but as long as the majority of the room, you know, you know, as a performer, you know, I either got them or I didn't.
Yeah.
And as long as I know that I did a good job and everyone had a good time, then I'm happy with that. You know, like last night here was fantastic. I felt like a rock star. We were out the front. People wanted selfies and they were toying. Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
You don't get that every show.
No.
And you can't use that as your benchmark, you know, for whether or not you had a good show. So as long as when you come off stage, if you feel that warmth, if you feel that the love and the appreciation, then you've had a good show and you've done your job.
Oh, I can't wait to. Are you got a gig here tonight?
I am indeed.
Oh, I'm out of Fremantle, but I would love to see you. I'd love to chat more and see you on stage one time, Stephen. Thank you so much, man. This has been awesome.
Thanks very much.
No worries at all.
Cheers.
Thank you, Stephen Whiteley.